So just to give you a sense of what I'm looking at the back-end recording screen. I can see the chat, which also shows up if you're watching on the YouTube page itself. And if you have a YouTube account or I think a Google account, you can leave comments in there and ask me anything. Um, I have a lot of stuff around me that I will bring out over the next couple of minutes. There's a pile of books. There's a single book there with lots of little notes in it to help me figure out where we're going. And I have a violin over there to demonstrate something from the book. Right. So let me just officially welcome everyone here. And I see comments coming in. That's great. Thanks for joining me on this online launch of Hey, There's Science in This. I decided to do this as an online thing because the entire book started out online. It's a collection of 24 essays that started out as more than 24 blog posts, I think 26 or 27, that I wrote over the course of many years. I think the oldest one in the book is from 2007, and the most recent one is from 2023. So that's a big time span. And what I did for this book is look at everything I'd ever written online that I had the rights to anyway. There's a lot of things out there that I can't use. But I looked at my old blogs on easternblot.net. I looked at my Nature Network blog post, Finch MP posts, and Forbes posts as well, and Medium posts. So there were 5 places where I knew that I could use the content to write book chapters. Um, and when going through them, I try to look for themes. And because I've written in so many different places and for so long, there wasn't a clear theme to begin with. But after going through everything and thinking about, well, what would I really want to share? What was a good story? What can I make better? What can I make more interesting? I think the theme that came out of it was really finding science in surprising places. I'm just going to grab the book here. So, some of the things in here, I've got a couple of little tabs of things that I want to read some excerpts of. But yeah, there are things in here about travel. So there's a hiking trail with some like science behind it. I might read some of that if there's time. There's the science of music. I'll definitely talk about that. My favorite chapter is probably the first one in the book, which is Rubber Ducks and Lego. And it's about both rubber ducks and Lego at different points in time falling off container ships into the ocean. And by the pattern of where they land on the beach, oceanographers have actually been able to map out ocean currents using bath toys. And so there's a really interesting story, especially the rubber ducks have been deliberately used for things like that. So that's probably my favorite story, which is why I put it first. But there's a lot in there. There's travel writing, and there's a poem in there, even, which I will also read tonight. I've read that in public before. Um, just going to have a peek at the comments. Lots of congratulations. Will Billy be appearing? Billy is my cat. I have locked him out, but that doesn't mean anything. He can open the door, so he might appear. I'm just hoping to keep him out of the way while my violin is also out, so they don't go well together. Um, So let me just, I also have a list of things and sort of time points that I definitely wanted to go through. Right, I already told you about the background of the book, but I think I skipped some things at the beginning. So I've got a few things to do here, including signing books. So people in the UK have been able to pre-order signed copies, and a couple of people have done that, and I've got those books here. And this is a box here. You could just see the top of the box, which has all their envelopes pre-written in it. So I'm not going to show that because it has people's address on it. But the books themselves, what I did was I put little notes at the top with the name of who ordered it, and then underneath that is another post-it with the name of who the book should be made out to, because that's not always the same name. So hopefully that's going to work out, and I'm going to take a couple of points during this during the book launch to just do some writing, and I'll try to talk through it. I also have a couple of postcards, which I'm just going to grab this one to show because I don't think she'll mind. I kind of posted it off the address. So those are also pre written, and then I can write them without worrying about showing people's address. So those are going to people outside of the UK who ordered a postcard. If anyone wants a postcard or a book, you can still get those. They're on the um, let me I can't actually see the web address, but if you go to the main website for the book, avaamson.com/HTSIT for hey there's science in this. There are links on there for signed books and signed postcards. And I am going to close that after the live stream. So if you're watching this later, they won't be there anymore. But if you're currently watching the live stream and you realize you actually wanted a signed book or a signed postcard, you can still quickly put in an order. And I'm going to check in a couple of minutes, like before we're done, I'll check to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So, that being said, I am going to start writing these postcards because two of the postcards are in Dutch. And I want to get that out of the way before I completely mess up my brain. So I can't talk English while writing Dutch. That just doesn't work. So I'm just going to do those real quick. What can we do in the meantime? You can thanks for the comments on the background art. Oh, I'm pointing the wrong way. That raccoon is actually from an artist in Portland. I forgot his name, but he draws animals in fancy clothes, and the raccoon has all the animals have a backstory, and the raccoon's backstory is that he's a scientist. So that's why that's why I have that. And the wanted poster is by an artist who currently lives near me. And I don't know if you can read it, but it says dead and alive because it's a wanted poster for Schrodinger's cat. So I'm going to see how this works with the signing. This is I'm going to start with the card for my sister because if I mess that up, that's fine. So if I was writing in in English, I could say what I was writing, but it's really hard. This is completely messing up my brain. Right. I wrote keep seeing science in everything, but in Dutch. And then I've got I've actually had an interesting search online for how people sign books, and I'm going to share what I learned. I used to think, and I think some people actually do this, and maybe the authors in the chat can chime in. I used to think that when people signed books, they use the same signature that's like on the back of their credit card. And then I thought, wait a minute, that seems like a terrible idea. Like, especially if you're sending these books out, especially people with like a huge audience. Like, I have Neil Gaiman's autograph in several books. I assume that's not also the one that's on the back of his credit card, right? So I had to think about what I wanted to do. Um, because I don't want to give out my official signature. But back when I was in high school, one of my art teachers actually taught us to come up with a way to sign your art. And this was for clay sculpture, so it was kind of very stylized. But I had this little squiggle that's just an E and an A together, and it kind of looks like how my dad's signature was. This one didn't turn out very well. You That's the little squiggle, and that's the thing that's going to my sister. um, So yeah, sorry that one didn't turn out well. I'll try to do better on the other cards and books, but that's what I'm going to end up using. So just this tiny little squiggly thing that isn't my real signature, so I don't really care if people steal it. I use it sometimes when you just need to put your initials somewhere because it literally is my initials, but kind of messily written. Right, I'm just going to finish the cards real quick. And then I'm going to read you a poem after this, which will be very weird. And I'll tell you, some of you might have heard the poem before or have read it. Um, if you already know it, try not to spoil it. Right. On the postcards, by the way, I'm assuming that you're also going to read the book and that you're not just ordering a postcard. I've moved on to English postcards, which is easier. I'm going to also keep an eye on the chat. And I'm not going to do too many of these at a time, so don't worry. I know this is pretty boring, but I'm going to make it interesting. Right. Okay, I'm done with cards for now. This was an English card for Richard in Canada. Oop, best wishes and thanks. So that's kind of and that autograph turned out great. So you're in luck. So one of my favorite chapters in this is also one of the weirdest. I put all these little tabs in here, but I don't know which tab is which. Oh, here it is. Right. When I was regularly looking at research papers in biology, I very often came across research papers that were done. The research was done on both mice and humans. And the reason for that is that mice and humans are genetically pretty similar. Like surprisingly so, maybe, if you think of how big a human is and how tiny a mouse is. We really have almost the same DNA, so, because of that, mice are often used in studies if people want to understand how humans work. And of course, researchers want to be funny when they publish their papers, so they might name their paper something like Of Mice and Men, Corticosteroids and Vicarious Participation. Now, the first time you see it, it's funny because, haha, Of Mice and Men, like the John Steinbeck novel. But I kept seeing it over and over and over. In fact, I found so many papers with titles referencing Of Mice and Men that I turned it into a poem. So there's nothing, every time in this poem that you hear Of Mice and Men, that's a different paper. Even if the line is just Of Mice and Men, that is yet another paper. And all of them are in the references at the back of the book. So you can actually, the reference section for that chapter is basically just the poem all over again because all the titles are exactly the lines in the poem. And I have done this on stage before. I mean, this is not a stage, this is my chair. But this is the one that you might have seen in person or otherwise read on my old blog. I have added a new introduction to it. I'm not going to read the entire introduction, but it's kind of a longer version of what I just said, and also a little bit more about Steinbeck because he has another connection to biology that's actually much more interesting than this whole poem. But yeah, so this is just a random list of journal titles, not journal titles, article titles. Of Mice and Men. Of Mice and Men, Metals and Mutations. Of Mice and Men, Corticosteroids and Vicarious Participation. Of Mice and Men, Universality and Breakdown of Behavioral Organization. Of Mice and Men, The Riddle of Tubular Regeneration. Of Mice and Men, The Human Sciences and the Humanities. Of Mice and Men, Skin Cells, Stem Cells, and Ethical Uncertainties. of mice and men. Of mice and men, rats and atherosclerosis. Of mice, cats and men. Is human breast cancer a zoonosis? Of mice and men. Of mice and men, a model of HIV and encephalitis. Of mice and men, murine models of anti-GBM antibody nephritis. Of mice and men, genetic skin diseases of keratin. Of mice and men, honesty and integrity in medicine. Of mice and men, of digital mice and men, of cholesterol free mice and men, of stressed mice and men, of only mice and men, of mice and men, but so much more too. Of mice, men, and physicians, of mice, men, and trypanosomes, of mice, men, and cholesterol, of mice, men, and the genome, of mice and men and chandeliers, of mice and men, of mice and men, an introduction to mouseology, or anal eroticism and Disney. Of mice and other beasts and men, of mice and men and cows and cats, of mice and rats, dogs, rabbits, cats and monkeys and men, of fruit flies, mice and men, the illicit review of science, of flies, mice and men, of mice and men, of mice and men and broken hearts, of mice and men, the tale of two therapies, of mice and men, the mice were right. So, again, every line in this entire poem is the title of a journal article. And it's one of my favorite blog posts. It doesn't quite fit the theme of the book, but I just had to put it in there. It was also a nightmare to format. But at least it was a little bit easier for my proofreader because, you can't just change the titles anyway. So it's um, there's a comment from Frank. PubMed shows that the mice men meme continues, and he found one from February 2024 of mice, dogs, horses, sheep, and men, a novel comparative anatomy dissection course in a United Kingdom university. So maybe I need to rewrite the poem with new lines from new papers in it because this one's quite old by now. So yeah, that's one of the chapters in there, and I've got a couple of other ones that I'll definitely talk about here. But I think it's time to sign some more books so that I can get through them all. I've got. I'll just grab 3, and the books at least are all in the same language, so I don't have to worry too much about that. Why are my notifications popping off? Okay, I can't see my notifications now, so sorry if you're trying to reach me. Um oops, let me grab all my stuff here. Right. So the first one I've got is for Steve. I'm not going to say exactly what I'm writing and everything because it's probably very similar for everyone. And all the books that I'm signing are going to go in the mail tomorrow morning, including the copy that I'm sending to the British Library, who also wants a copy of literally every book that's published in the UK with a British ISBN number. But I'm not going to sign that copy. If they want a signed copy, they can buy it online. The next one is Sophie. It's not my best handwriting, by the way, so I want to do it kind of quick. But it's legible, and I think that's all that matters. I was looking at the signed books we have at home to see what other people write in their books, and we've got the COVID book by Jeremy Farrar, and I feel like he wrote a whole other book on that first page. I don't remember it taking so long when he was doing the signing, but there was a lot in there. Next one is for Nigel and Glore. So they live quite close, but it's still going to go in the regular post and probably won't get there until after Easter. And then after this one, I'm going to do something more fun again because I know this is boring to just watch me sign. Unless it's your book that I'm signing at that moment, in which case it's probably just slightly more interesting. I don't know why I put my last name in the book for people I know, but deal with it. It's got my last name in there too. Um, I'm gonna have a quick look at the chat. Hello, Heather and Frank and Dan, Maria, Kath, Dana, and Martin and Larry. Hi. And Francis. Hey. Right. Yeah, if you have any questions about the book, feel free to ask them at any point. I will check in whenever I can look at it. Whenever I'm tired of just looking at my own face. Um right. Oh yeah, let's see where we are in terms of time. Oh, I'm on schedule. I have not talked about the cover yet. I'm going to do that in the next batch of signing, actually. Um, is that going to work out? Yeah, that's going to work out. I'm going to move on to the scary music chapter because that's my favorite one, and I want to make sure that I have time for that. So, let me grab the book for this. Um, it's quite early in the book. There it is. So, there's a whole chapter about okay, let me just answer Heather's question first. Where do you prefer those of us outside the UK purchase a copy? In general, also after this goes up, I'm going to close the pre-sales for the signed copies. I put on my website a list of various international bookstores. I don't have all of them on there, but in different countries, you can pick your favorite bookstore and search for my name. Some of them only have my other book that's coming out in May that we're not talking about today. Um, but if they don't have Hey There's Science in this, a lot of the ebook is definitely internationally available. Paperbacks is very much hit and miss in different countries. So in the UK, I think the chain stores are the easiest place to find it, whereas in Canada, the independent bookstores are the easiest place to find it. And over the next couple of weeks, it might still come out in more stores because some of them just take a very long time to get it from the catalog and put it in the system. And then the way that they treat independently published books it varies a lot. So just look for it and find it. Um, so yeah, the Canadians have been able to find it in independent bookstores, and I think US and UK are the easiest to find it. And I've made sure that it's in the Dutch bookstore, that bol.com. But yeah, I haven't checked all the different countries, and I think in France, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the store, but FNAC definitely has the ebook and might also be able to order the paperback. I haven't checked if they do the paperback, but it should be somewhere. Right. Scary music. This is based on a post I wrote on Medium a while ago, and this is actually one of the oh Maria says just pronounce FNAC like you're reading it. Okay. um Scary music is it was a Halloween blog post a couple years ago, and it was about what makes music scary. um the conclusion is that it's really two things. One is dissonant sounds that don't quite match up, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. That's associated with being scary, Probably because it makes people feel very uncomfortable and it sounds a lot like animal distress sounds. So that's one reason. The other is really association, sounds that shouldn't be scary at all. There's no reason scientifically why they're scary. We've heard so many times in the context of scary movies that now we think they're scary. Right. I'm actually, instead of reading it, I'm just going to grab my violin. So, one of the historically famous scary sounds is called the devil's interval. And it's really just a distance of three full notes. Like if you think of a piano, a full note is two white ones with a black one in between. And then a half note is from white to the next black one, or two white ones with no black one in between. That's the easiest way to think about it. So on a violin, when it's tuned normally, the distance between two strings, so this and this, is 3.5 steps. It's called a perfect fifth. So just a little bit less than that is really awful sounding. And in the opening bars of Danse Macabre by Saint-Saëns, he actually gives you instructions to tune your violin in a different way, but tune down the top string so that the distance between the highest two strings is no longer a perfect fifth, but actually becomes a devil's interval. So normally the distance between two strings is this. I hope that's not too loud. That sounds okay, right? That's all harmonic sounding, because really what happens scientifically is each note produces a sound wave, and these two different sound waves fit quite nicely on top of each other. They regularly meet each other and they work in harmony. But now the dissonant chord, the devil's interval, so I have tuned down one string to create this sound. That's awful. That's horrible. And the reason it's horrible is that the sound waves for these two separate notes, so this one and this one, they really don't line up very well. They eventually meet, but it takes ages. And yeah, it just makes it sound dissonant. It makes it sound like an animal distress sound, and that's why it's scary. So the opening of Danse Macabre, which you might have heard, makes use of that. So you do the weird tuning, and then this is the opening. So yeah, it's pretty hideous sounding, and it does sound scary. But another thing that sounds really scary, like I mentioned, is just things by association. And a famous example of that is Dies Irae. I can't pronounce it very well because it's Latin and I'm not a Roman from the olden days. I'm just going to pull this up so I don't make a mistake. So, the original Gregorian chant from whenever in the Middle Ages is this. Let me just make sure everything's correct. If that sounds familiar, it's because that bit, either all 8 notes or just the first four, have been used many, many times in scary films, scary musicals, scary plays, anything that's supposed to be scary. Just gonna pull up the chat to see if anyone recognizes it from anywhere. But I am gonna play it again, just in a slightly different key, and I think I need to do it a little bit faster. But see if you recognize this, and actually imagine it not being played by violin, but I think it's a wind instrument, like maybe a tuba. Imagine this next bit being played by a brass instrument. Mhm. Well, my shoulder rest is falling off, but that's okay because I'm done with the violin. Does anyone recognize that from anything? Rachmaninoff used Dies Irae theme a few times. Yes. I can't remember off the top of my head in what, but yeah, it's in so many things. Um it's not Sleeping Beauty. It's actually, so like I said, it's not being played by a violin in what I'm referencing, but it is the theme of The Shining. I'm not sure I played it at the right speed. I actually had to listen to it to make sure that it really had it in it. But yeah, it's the first notes of the Shining theme. You can look it up on, don't look it up on YouTube now because you're watching this, but when this is over, go look it up. Um so The Shining is actually one of the examples I use in the book of scary music, because there's a very funny video. Again, don't look it up now. I'll tell you what it is in the book, where someone has changed the music of The Shining. So it's no longer that Dies Irae theme, but it's instead Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel, and it's completely changes the mood of the film. So he put the trailer to happy music, and it immediately makes it look like a comedy, which is, that's the power of music. Right. I am going to check the time. Okay, I'm half an hour in. I don't want to go over the hour because that's just too long. And I already need water. I am going to sign a couple more books. And I need to, okay, these ones I need to use my brain, because two of the next three I have to dedicate to other people who didn't order it. But I will tell you the name of the people who ordered it so you know what I'm signing. These were the books ordered by Ewan, Scott, and Shruti. So you'll know who the books are dedicated to, and I will try to do it correctly. And if not, I'll do it again off camera. So tomorrow morning, everything I sign now is going to go in the post. Um, I have no idea how much the postage is, but I discovered actually that our kitchen scale is calibrated exactly with the post office scale, so I can just measure it at home, weigh it at home, look up how much it is, and it will be pretty accurate. Right. I'll do this real quick. I can see from the corner of my eye that the chat window is moving. Um Oh, cool. Yeah, so in terms of age, my recommend, actually, I in the poem I just read, that has one of the only, there are two things that are adults only. There was that one journal title which was, I forgot what it was, Disney and eroticism. That's one thing that is a slightly adult theme. There's also a Dali painting that I mentioned, and Salvador Dali called this the Great Masturbator in the Sky. Why? I don't really know. It's a character that comes back in a couple of his paintings, and it's in that one, and there it's in the sky in that one. So yeah. So blame Salvador Dali and whoever gave that journal article their title. But otherwise, it's one of my beta readers did not have a science background, and he did not understand everything, but still enjoyed it. So it's Yeah, have a look and see, because I've been saying 16 plus is definitely okay. There's no like, there is science in there that you haven't yet learned when you're 16, but I do my best to explain it. But otherwise, there are stories that are definitely okay for all ages, and others that are just too complicated. And then there's those two phrases that are the only like parental guidance required. um, but yeah, there's a chapter in here about hiking. If I've got time, I can show some pictures. Right. I got one left in this. This one actually is dedicated to two children. um, Two children that I know, Ela and Aryun, and they, I think, like I said, some of it will be complicated, but other things um, are just fun stories. Like the one about the hiking trail, I think is absolutely fine for any age, and it's the science in that is really like Pangea and tectonic plates. There's nothing that you don't also discuss in primary school once in a while. At least I did. I don't know if everyone did, but oh, and there is one about set in a school. I also have a picture of that. I've got pictures on my iPad. According to this situation here, I can screen share, but when I tried it earlier today, it's not actually sharing my screen. So instead, I've got pictures that I want to show just on my iPad. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Did the um did the violin sound come across sort of okay, by the way? Because I'm actually glad that I'm using YouTube and not Zoom, because when I tried this on Zoom, oh, good. When I tried it on Zoom, Zoom cuts off as soon as you start playing violin, because it thinks, oh, that's a background sound. You're not talking, and we need to make the voice really clear. And even when I changed the settings, it just sounded like it was trying to balance violin and voice, and it just didn't work. But yeah, YouTube is better at it, so I'm glad I'm here. Right. Oops, one book lost their post-it, but I can, luckily I've been writing names in it so I can match the books up with the correct envelopes later. Yeah, on Zoom you have to change the settings to sound for musicians, and then even when you change it in settings, there's still like another little toggle, and even then it tries to do too much with removing the background noise. YouTube does have a lot of background noise. I can actually I can hear the fan in my test recording, but the fan isn't running now, so you should be fine. Right, let me just check the time and my notes. I've got 20 minutes left. I've got three books that I definitely need to sign while here. So I will have time for that. I did the violin already. That was the thing that I was most worried about taking up too much time. Um, ooh, yes, I'm gonna read you another bit, and this one has background. So there was a chapter that I really wanted to include in the book. I lost my own book now. Oh no, I can. There it is. There's a chapter that I really wanted to include because I really loved it, and it was basically a list of animal descriptions. But I wrote this in 2017 or whenever the DVD for the Fantastic Beasts film came out. And kind of, playing into that, I was like, oh, hey, here are some seven real life fantastic beasts and where to find them. Since then, um, author J.K. Rowling has expressed some weird transphobic opinions that I don't agree with, and I did not want to have the chapter in there with the title that clearly references her film. But I did want the animal descriptions in the book, and I didn't want anyone to miss out on those. Luckily, almost nothing in the Harry Potter universe is very original. Like, she very much bases everything on existing lore, like any existing stories or references or tropes. And in the case of the Fantastic Beasts book, that is entirely based on medieval bestiaries, which were books in the Middle Ages that were just like really what's in the film. They were the books that had both real animals in it and these completely mythical creatures like dragons and basilisks. So bestiaries are identical to the Fantastic Beasts book. So instead of focusing on Fantastic Beasts, I wrote an entire introduction about bestiaries and I kept the animals in there. And it's a couple of pages about the history of bestiaries, and it references Fantastic Beasts only in the context of this being one of the examples of bestiaries in pop culture. And then it goes on to these seven descriptions of real animals. So the first one is an axolotl, and then I've got a platypus. I never know how to pronounce the coelacanth, the South African prehistoric fish with legs, the eye, the lemur creature, the tardigrade, the giant Pacific octopus, and the pangolin. And I'll read you the tardigrade because that's my favorite creature in here, and also I think in terms of writing, it's my favorite bit. So tardigrades, why they're fantastic. This tiny creature has 8 legs, looks like a microscopic teddy bear, and can survive the most extreme conditions. They can be frozen for years at very low temperatures without dying. They can go 30 years without food. They're essentially immune to radiation and they can survive in space. Some of them can also tolerate high temperatures, but over the long term, tardigrades do prefer it cool. They don't do well if the temperature is consistently warm, so climate change may be a problem even for tardigrades with all their superpowers. Where do they live? Like the axolotl, the tardigrade's fantastic properties have made it an interesting research subject for scientists, so the most likely place to actually see one is under a lab microscope. But in the wild, they're in lakes, ponds, meadows, soil, moss, and many other places all over the world. They're basically everywhere, and they're probably in your garden right now, so go say hi. So that was my tiny bit of the bestiary chapter. Um, let me see how we're doing for time. I think I'm going to do. Ooh, no, I'm going to show you a photo before I go on to the rest of the thing. Oh, I haven't talked about the cover yet. So this cover, three people independently, including Dan, who's in the chat, three people said that this reminds them of the shape of Ireland. That's completely coincidental. It has nothing to do with Ireland. It doesn't get mentioned in the book at all. What it is two blobs. Really, I have to sort of angle it because you can see the ring light reflected. There's this bottom blob and this top blob, and in thinking about the design for a long time, it actually didn't have the top blob. It was the bottom one, and then there was a smudge at the top, but it looked really imbalanced. And just after playing around with many different versions of the cover, this one looked the most attractive, and I guess Ireland is just very attractive looking also. So so yeah, and into photos that I wanted to show. There's a lot in the book where there are no pictures in the book. Like the cover, this is the only picture, and actually I lie. There's one picture in the back. It's a picture of me. So all you get is something that looks like Ireland and a picture of me. So that's not what it was like as original blog posts. Blog posts, you can put in any pictures you want, and a lot of the posts had pictures, and there just wasn't a way to make that look nice. So I posted them on Instagram, but I'll also just show you some here if I can find my photos. Right, that one I'll skip for now because I want to read that. Um, right, there's a chapter about building homes from garbage and mushrooms. This is an earth ship in New Mexico that's made with there's tires inside and mud and recycled glass bottles. I think if I hold it like this, you can see it there. So that's one. I was there. I write about visiting these in the book. Then the School of the Air in Australia. There's a whole chapter about my experience visiting that. That's one of the chapters that I had to heavily rewrite. I'll show you the school first. So this is basically a radio studio or a video studio in a school in Alice Springs in the middle of the desert in Australia. It says they were doing that for 57 years, but it's actually 70 now because this is a 13-year-old photo. Um, this school was doing remote education for young children before anyone else was doing it. Now it's so common, right? With COVID, everyone went online and remote. But back then, this was really unusual still. And they've been doing it for now 70 years and then 57 when I visited. They started out with just satellite radios. And then obviously, once the internet got like more widespread and everyone was better connected, they moved things online with videos. But yeah, they were really ahead of the curve. And I in the chapter where I write about this, I also talk a little bit about some of the research on remote education and why what makes it work and what makes it doesn't work, what makes it not work. Because a lot of schools during COVID were really struggling. Children's grades went down, and it was just very hard to do this quickly and to make sure that it all worked. But education researchers figured out that one of the reasons is that you really need a very strong support network, both at home and at school. And that's one of the things that the School of the Air has. So that's why it works and has been working for a long time. This photo, I also wanted to just bring up these are mammoth teeth, and they this photo was taken August 2008, I think. In February 2009, the LACMA in LA, the art museum, and the tar pits, which are right next to it, announced that when they were building the new parking garage at the art museum, they found a mammoth skeleton, basically a complete mammoth with these teeth. And it was announced February 2009. But I already knew about it because I was there in August, and this was public. Every single tourist saw this, and when you did a tour of the tar pits, they told everyone about it. So by the time it was news, it wasn't actually breaking news. It had been going on for a month. But yeah, they found a mammoth in a parking garage. So that's a I love this photo because it's just it looks so insignificant, but it really is very significant. So and I described the tar pits a bit in there as well. So right, I'm going to do the last three books that I definitely needed to sign here, and then I've got another bit to read in here, and I've got some more. I've got a photo of the Appalachian Trail and a relevant bit from the book about that as well. I know some people have to leave, so thanks for joining. And this is going to go online after it's all formatted. I hope I get to put it up tomorrow, and then you can see it. So these books are for Sam S, John H, Brian D. All have very common names, so I gave them their first initial, so you definitely know who it is. And yeah, I'm actually looking at one of the photos on the iPad as well. The Appalachian Trail chapter also covers Algonquin Park in Canada. but the bit I'm going to read is just about a piece of Appalachian Trail. I wish my title or topic had gave me the opportunity to write something funny in the books. I'm trying. I'm trying to make it relevant, but it's difficult because like when I went through my own signed, like not my own, signed books by others that I own. My favorite is Ed Young's "I Contain Multitudes," which he dedicated to Ava and all her multitudes. So I'm sure that's like what he put in all the books. So it's for you and for all the bacteria and microbes that live in and on you. So they got a book too. That's nice. But yeah, with hey, there's science in this. There's not much I could do. What I have been doing, I will get back to the books. The pre-order books that are going to go out, they're also going to get these little stickers that say, "Hey, there's science in this," and you can stick them on things that have science in it, which is everything really, right? So you can stick them on everything. I am just going to pop over to this website and refresh this to see if. Da-da-da. Ah, thanks, Heather, for ordering a postcard. I'm gonna squeeze that in before we're done here, hopefully. This is one of the ones. Oh yeah. Sorry, I have to make sure I'm dedicating these to the right people. Does anyone have any questions about the process of how I did all the self-publishing? Because that's another whole story. I could fill another hour with that. Right. It's gonna look. I've got so much to look at. I've got books and chat. Do you know Margaret Atwood? Oh yeah, I know about Margaret Atwood's pen. Ooh, that would have been so easy. I could have done remote signings where like she signs in one place and then the signature appears somewhere else in another country. But I guess you have to be a science fiction writer and not a science writer to get the fancy tech. Um, what were the major hurdles of self-publishing? I mean, to be honest, this whole publicity bit because there is nobody doing it for me. Um, at the same, so I wrote this book most well. I wrote it years ago, but I edited it mostly last year, and then the final like stages were done early this year, and then I sent it to the printer. Um, but at the same time, I took a break from writing this last year, and in 3 months, I wrote a book on commission for DK Books. Once that was done, I mean, I got the proofs back to check, so I saw it last when it was in the proofreader stage, but I haven't seen it since. And that's coming out in a couple of weeks in May. And I just haven't had to do anything for that in the last couple of months. So that's, there's a lot of work that's done by publishers and by editors and publicists and agents and all of that. And I've had to do everything for this one. Um, would I do it again? I might, but I need a little break from it. So I do. I kind of want to have the experience of something traditionally published with a book proposal and someone else dealing with the admin difficult things. Um, so I am working on a proposal at the moment, which I'm not going to talk about at all. I Although I will say that I got the idea from writing the other book that's coming out in May. That's 100 topics in biology, and if you read the entire book from start to finish, you might see the little thing that's just the tiny, tiny little thing, maybe just one word that sparked my interest, where I was like, that would be an amazing book proposal. So yeah, hopefully that works out. Um, I am currently signing Brian's book, and then that's the last one on the pile, and I've just got Heather's postcard to do. And I do want to show you the Appalachian Trail photo and the little story, but yeah, we've got time. Right. This worked out pretty well with the timing. Oh, and I make it look so easy, but I actually have a schedule by everything is broken down in 5 minutes, and I'm actually a little bit behind. But let me show you this picture. Beware, it's a picture of me. Um, this is me on the Appalachian Trail. I didn't walk the whole trail. I wish I had that kind of time and energy. But what I've been doing every time I'm near the Appalachian Trail, which is this 2,000-mile hiking trail in the eastern US, it goes from Mount Springer Mountain in Georgia to Mount Katahdin in Maine. And this is just a little bit of it in Pennsylvania. And this bit is called the Pole Steeple Trail, and that piece of rock next to me, that is the pole steeple. And the landscape behind me, that's the Appalachian Mountains, really. That's like what the mountain range looks like. It looks particularly pretty over here. It doesn't always look that pretty, but so keep that picture in your mind, because I have to grab the book now. So in this chapter, I write about two areas, actually, two national parks. So the Appalachian Trail in the U.S. and Algonquin Park in Ontario. So for the Canadian fans, there is some CanCon in there. Um, the Algonquin Park was formed during the last ice age, so relatively recent in like Earth terms. But the Appalachian Trail is much older. So let me just grab this. So this is me talking about the picture that you just saw. Oh, yes, Larry recognized my t-shirt. I have to pull it up again. I'm wearing a Voices t-shirt in here. That's I forgot what it stands for. You can put it in the chat, but it was a conference about science songs and science songs used for education. So don't remember how the V comes in there, but um right, let me read the bit that was about that photo. This hilly landscape is part of one of the oldest mountain ridges on Earth, and the geological history here is much older than that of Canada's Algonquin Park, which only took shape after the Ice Age. That's just a baby park compared to the Appalachian Mountains, which formed more than 400 million years ago when all the continents were connected as Pangaea. Most of the prehistoric central Pangean mountains became what is now the Appalachians, but other parts of it turned into the Scottish Highlands and the Atlas Mountains in Morocco after the continents drifted apart. After many millions of years, the smooth green hills of Pennsylvania don't look like a rugged mountainous landscape at all anymore. Erosion has washed away most of the mountains, so now they're relatively easy to walk, especially for day hikers like me. But the area kept some souvenirs from its more mountainous history. Some rocks were more resistant to erosion than the surrounding ground, so while most of the mountains wore down to hills, the occasional spire of rock remained. That includes the pole steeple that this trail was named after, which sticks up above the hills and formed the cliff from which I looked out over the valley. So there you have it, the science of of a photo. And I'm wearing a scientific t shirt, so it's extra sciencey. Right, it is 8 o'clock, but I am just going to quickly write Heather's card while I'm here. And then while I do that, I want to remind everyone that the book is out officially tomorrow. If you go to avaamson.com/ATSIT, so the abbreviation of Hey There's Science in This, you can find a bunch of links to various places that have either the paperback or the ebook available. Some of them might still get it later because of the time it takes to populate things, but um, they should all be there eventually. I've got some more talks coming up in June. One is on June 7. That's online with Bite Size Bio, where I've been working to host other people's webinars and introduce them. But I'm actually giving my own webinar on June 7 about how to create a hook for science stories. And that's tied into how I tied science into lots of different topics for the book. And then if you're in London on June 19, I'm speaking at PubSci in London Bridge. And I'll also have books there to that you can buy, and I can sign books that you already have or books that you bought there. And I'll have some stickers and postcards there as well. What's the science in your necklace? Um, y- I I hope it's visible. I can make the light reflect on it in a certain way. This is, let me pull it back in view. This is caffeine. I forgot which bits are the carbons and which are the nitrogens, but yeah, it's the structure of caffeine. So it's the science of a cup of coffee. So I'm just gonna quickly do this. And thank you all so much for being here. This is going to be available on my YouTube channel forever, as long as Google exists, probably, whatever that is. So, thanks so much for joining and joining in the chat and for ordering the book and reading the book. And the only thing left to say is if you read the book and you have something to say about it, please also review it on either Amazon or Goodreads or both, or just tell your friends or tag me on social media. Just that will help other people find it and realize that it's a real book and that they might want to read it. And hopefully you got an impression of what it's like from the bits I read. I chose some very different chapters to give you a sense of the variety in there. So yeah, thanks so much. Thanks everyone. And postcards and signed books will go out tomorrow and hopefully arrive not too late after Easter. Bye.